Adiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini. Our apostolic mandate. Letter of our Holy Father, Pope Pius X, to the French archbishops and bishops on the Sillon, Sillon, pronounced Sillon. It's a French word that means a furrow. The farmers put a furrow in their field and plant the seed, cover it with dirt, and out of that grows the crops. In this encyclical on the Zionist movement, St. Pius X examines the social, economic, and political problems of the 20th century and gives us the authentic teaching of the Church on many vexed questions, such as democracy, socialism, human dignity, justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, authority, obedience. Right? These are very questions Vatican II dealt with, and they already had the answer with Pius X. The language is forceful, direct, unequivocal, meaning unambiguous. None of the qualified statements, ambiguous propositions, timid suggestions, unanswered questions, and perhapses, which are the hallmark of more recent pronouncements. Once you have read this encyclical, you know where you stand and what, as a Catholic, you are expected to give your assent to. Introduction, the contents. So Bishop Williamson used to always say, look at the table of contents. That's very Catholic to lay out the order of things and how it's approached. So introduction, page 1, page 4, paragraph headings, page 5, the encyclical proper, page 25, the summary of the social and political teachings of the Church contained in this encyclical, page 27, notes and commentaries. So these are somebody else's notes in here on the side. Okay, printed in Australia, March 1974. So this is quite early in the Revolution. And Yves Dupont is the one who translated it. Anybody familiar with his other book called The Coming Chastisement? No?
Never heard of it.
Well, most homes have it. It's a little short book. It shows a comet. And it's in purple cover and white edging. And it's called The Coming Chastisement. And he just summarizes all the prophecies of saints about the apostate church. The 3 days of darkness, the chastisements that are going to come upon the world, the Rome being eclipsed, losing the faith, all these prophecies of saints. He just summarizes it all in the book. All right, introduction. So he's a good traditional Catholic who's putting this together. Take the first paragraph, please, Guadalupe.
Starting on page 5, Father?
No, page 1.
Introduction. What the Sillon exactly was and what it stood for will be made clear in this encyclical. Briefly, it was a movement grouping the early Christian democrats of this century. The word Sillon is the French for furrow, and is still largely agricultural economy. This term denoted work, patience, and dogged perseverance. In today's industrial economy, the word workshop would probably be preferred. In fact, workshop was first used by the communists when setting up their cells in factories to foment industrial unrest, and it is now widely used in the sense of study group or action group outside the factory context, and even in Catholic circles. This is not to imply, of course, that the Sillon was a kind of communist workshop. It is merely designed to explain the use of the word Sillon to English-speaking speakers by providing an analogy. This letter was dated August the 25th, 1910. Why bring it to light again? Because the socio-political errors of contemporary Catholicism and their incidents on the life of the Church take their origin in Sionism. This encyclical, therefore, is terribly relevant to our own time. For the first time in the history of the Church, democratic ideas have won official recognition. Even the provincial of a religious order has to abide by the decisions of his quote-unquote council. The poison has permeated every stratum of church life.
And case in point, Archbishop Lefebvre was Superior General in the early 60s of the Holy Ghost Fathers, the largest missionary order of the church. And after Vatican II, right after, 1964, 65, they started changing the statutes of his congregation and said, you have to start listening to the lower ranks and giving them more authority. And the Archbishop said, I can't govern a system like this. This is democracy in an order of the church. The superior governs. And yes, a good superior listens to his subjects, but the decision is his, not the subjects. So they're putting everything upside down. And that's why he resigned. And he resigned partly also because of the attacks on the faith already starting with Vatican II. Okay, read on. Go ahead, Andres. Welcome back for the Catholic ceremonies. It's good to have you back. So go ahead.
The Sion was essentially a democratic movement. It had its newspaper, The Democratic Awakening. France was the only major European nation with a republican government, and the Sionists agreed to accept the constitution in order to change the legislation, a policy which the liberal Catholics had already pursued during the reign of Leo XIII. But the Sionists were far more progressive than the liberal Catholics of some 20 years earlier. The liberal Catholics had adhered to the main tenets of the faith, at least in theory, if not in fact. Theirs was a policy aiming at an accommodation between their principles and the practical demands of modern times. The Sionists went much further. They held opinions which were incompatible with Catholic doctrine. They had made their own the political concepts condemned by Pius IX 46 years earlier and by Leo XIII some 25 years earlier. Theirs was the first Christian democratic movement in Western Europe, and this explains why Pius X sent his letter to the French bishops only and not to the bishops of other nations. Pius X dealt a death blow to Sionism and its democratic dreams, as he himself put it. But whilst a movement may be destroyed, ideas cannot. So the Zionist ideas continued to spread under different labels. By 1945, the Catholic world in its entirety had been infected. 1965 marked their official victory.
What was 1965?
The end of the council.
So when we read this, Sionism can be replaced with Vatican II. When you read Sion or Sionism, just say Vatican II, because it's the same. And what he was talking about here was in 1905, the French government was pressuring the Catholic clergy to accept the new republic and accept separation of church and state. And they pressured Pius X. You must accept this if you want your clergy to be in peace. If you don't, we're going to kick them out to the streets. So what did Pius X do? Either he says no compromise with separation of church and state. Therefore, his bishops, nuns, monasteries, convents are all sacked, stolen by the state, a kind of a repeat of the French Revolution, and then put to the streets, literally. Or he compromises a little bit to save his bishops, priests, so they can keep their buildings, keep their monasteries, but he compromises a little bit to save a worse situation. What does Pius X do? Anybody?
He takes the former stance.
No compromise on doctrine at all. And that decision strengthens the faith of all the Catholics, and especially the religious and the bishops and the priests. It strengthens them because, all right, they're put to the streets. Why? We're persecuted for the Catholic faith. But had he compromised on the Catholic faith, on a principle, just one little grain of incense, that would have done more damage, incalculable damage. So Pius X was immovable on the principles. And that was a great example that Archbishop Lefebvre followed. That's the example all of us have to follow. When it comes to doctrine, we cannot compromise. There might be a little bending here or there on intolerance of some moral questions. But with doctrine, never. Never. Yes?
I was going to comment that modern man finds it very difficult nowadays to appreciate the example that the popes have given us on how to address the world and modern man going off track, even in just one little word, off of what the purity of the doctrine is. Because most people they look at this, what Pius X did, and say he made a huge fuss over just one little doctrine of the church.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas he could have just given up that point and then saved the church in France a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that doctrine, and even just one word of that doctrine, is more important than all of the buildings that we could ever have in the entire world.
And of course, he was called rigid, intolerant, unbending. Was another one. So now these popes are the exact opposite. They compromise on all doctrines, but they won't tolerate Latin Mass. They won't tolerate Archbishop Lefebvre's position. So they punish it. But tradition is right. So, all right, let's pick up again. Thank you, Andres. That was a good point. And St. Pius X he's he's putting on the boxing gloves, and he only has a few hits and knocks Sionism cold. All right, pick it up, please, Andres. Why don't you pick up the reading?
Yes, Father. 1965 marked their official victory. Innovation for its own sake was the order of the day. Pope Pius X, on the other hand, was not innovating when he condemned democratic ideas and practices. And, at the other end of the preconciliar period, Pius XII in no way changed the teachings of his predecessors when he gave his 1944 Christmas message, his definition of true democracy in the Thomistic sense, and his discussion of the sources of authority was an implicit condemnation of modern political superstitions.
Well said. Modern political superstitions. That's exactly what they are. Go on.
Likewise, his discussion of the rights of man in his 1942 Christmas message bore no resemblance whatever to the Masonic rights of man of modern democracies. As he saw it, and as St. Thomas also saw it, true democracy is not so much a political system or regime as it is an institution within a political system. In fact, he asserted that true democracy can be found even in an absolute monarchy, which of course is perfectly true, since true democracy lies in the designation of leaders, especially within subsidiary bodies.
Yeah, well, we got a hierarchy of authority or powers, as you might say. Go on.
Not in the conferring of authority. As for Leo XIII, he had reminded us in Diuturnum Illud, Immortale Dei, Rerum Novarum, Gravis de Communi, and other documents that, quote, authority cannot be delegated by the people, because in the first place, it does not rest with the people.
So there's the first major false principle of democracy, right there, that all authority comes from the people. That's so false. It's a superstition and it's a heresy. So it has to be very clear with the clergy. There is no compromising on this point. The authority does not come from the people. It comes from below. It comes from above. And that's what collegiality at Vatican II was all about. Introducing democracy, so the authority comes from the below to the Pope. That's exactly what happened. Now you have the parish councils who tell the bishop what to do. The bishop's councils tell the cardinals what to do, and the Pope has to cave in because of the name of collegiality. You saw that visibly with Pope John Paul II. He was refusing first to give communion in the hand. But then when he came to Canada, the bishop said, put out your hands. Put out your hands when you go to communion. So they wanted to pressure the Pope. And he caved in the name of collegiality. So perfect example. All right, go on.
All the life of the church. All modern democratic ideas in the life of the state and now in the life of the church were condemned in no uncertain terms by all popes, even prior to Pius X. Viz. Open parenthesis, to name only a few, close parenthesis. Pius VI in Caritas Quae, Gregory XVI in Mirari Vos, Singulari Nos, Nunquam Fore, and Pius IX in Quanta Cura, Maxima Quidem, Ad Apostolice, Acerbissimum, close quote. It would be wrong, therefore, to single out Pius X as a, quote, reactionary, close quote, as a reactionary pope. He simply reasserted the unchangeable doctrines of the Church at a time when the sons of the Church themselves, the Sionists, were propagating their Masonistic errors.
Right, so this is the point Archbishop Lefebvre always makes. You have this whole line of popes with all these encyclicals teaching the same thing, condemning the liberal errors, condemning modern democracy. And some of these encyclicals are infallible, like Quanta Cura and the Syllabus. They fulfill all four conditions. But it also is infallible simply because it's part of not all of them are part of the extraordinary magisterium, but certainly part of the
Ordinary magisterium.
Yes. So that by that fact also shares the infallibility. So here you got all this tradition down to Pius XII. Pius XII dies. Vatican II erupts and teaches a whole new doctrine. Who's right? Who's right? Vatican II or all the popes of tradition?
All the popes of tradition.
And if Vatican II is right, then the Holy Ghost is schizophrenic and a liar and contradicts himself. And it's a blasphemy. So what do we do in this confusion? Stay with tradition. Calmly, solidly, and ready to die for it. That's how we have to be. It's wonderful, isn't it, this reassertion. Go ahead.
And if Pius X is to be viewed as a reactionary, it would be more correct to say that all popes up to Vatican II were reactionaries. What has happened since Vatican II is verily and truly a revolution. And in order to combat it, it is imperative to reprint this letter on Sionism, which, to the best of my knowledge, is unprocurable in the English language.
Yeah, so he's the first to take it from Latin to English, Yves Dupont. Another very powerful point, which we're going to study in the next book on the sacred liturgy, is his name was Lambert Baudouin. Lambert Baudouin. He was one of the early pioneers of the liturgical wreckage. And he belonged, and his father belonged, to the Sionists, who were imbued with this idea of the democracy, of the people, by the people, for the people. We need a mass by the people, for the people, of the people. We need congregational singing. We need participation. We need more and more laity involved, right? You see where all this is starting to come from? And Baudouin influenced heavily, guess who? He's the grandfather of guess who wrote the New Mass?
Paul VI, or Bugnini.
Annibale Bonini. Annibale Bonini, he probably had a huge picture with Baudouin and votive candles in front of him. He was a hero to him. But Baudouin and his father were deeply entrenched in the Sionist ideas condemned by Pius X. So you see the seeds are planted for the new Mass already back here. Very important point, which up till about 4 or 5 years ago, I never knew this. That connection. It's a very important connection. So, and it's all about that time that Our Lady of Fatima appears and said the errors of Russia are going to spread throughout the world, not just politically, but in the liturgy, in the Mass, these revolutionary masses. All right, pick it up. Where did you leave off?
I finished the paragraph.
Okay, pick it up, Michael.
It was published many decades ago in the American Catholic Quarterly Review, but this review is now defunct. I possess a photostat copy of this early translation. I have studied it, and I have compared it with the French original. The French phraseology, style, and sentence construction have been transposed in English almost as written by Pius X. This does not make for readability. Moreover, paragraph 34 was missing. Some words were misprinted, e.g.,
For example, exempla gratia.
for example, embarrassed was missing.
No, embarrassed instead of.
Embarrassed instead of embraced. Indication instead of innovation.
Invitation.
Safe instead of serve, etc.
So it was a sloppy translation from the French, in other words. Go on.
And some words and expressions were misunderstood. In view of all this, a new translation had to be made, while remaining as close as possible to the original, even at the cost of retaining some words not in very common usage in the English language. I have nevertheless departed from the verbatim or literal rendering, and I have adopted a more readable translation, a syntactic or conceptual rendering.
Anthony?
However, as an exception to the rule, I have retained the word city, whilst the early translator chose state. The word state conjures up the notion of government and political structures, whereas the word city applies more specifically to relations between citizens and to social structures. The use of city, in this sense, is not at all alien to the English language. Mary of Agreda's masterpiece,
Ciudad. Read it.
Ciudad de Dios. Ciudad Dios,
Which means?
the city of God,
Yeah.
was translated as the city of God. Likewise, in St. Augustine's work of the same name, Civitas, has been translated by city whenever it occurs in the book. And in our own time, the decrees of Vatican II also use it. It did not seem necessary, therefore, to depart from literalness in this case. In making a translation of this nature, quite a few difficulties are encountered. Take the following passage, for instance, open parentheses, and it may not be the most telling, close parentheses. Quote, but we have had the dolour to see and the advices and the reproaches slip on their fleeing souls and remain without result, end quote. This schoolboy translation is obviously unacceptable. Two alternatives are possible. Either a rendering that will retain the flavor of the original, not depart unduly from it, yet be somewhat quaint in the English language, as this, quote, but we had the sorrow to see both advice and reproaches run off the sheath of their elusive souls, and they were of no avail, end quote. Or a rendering that will be familiar to all, that will convey an identical meaning, but be too remote from the original, quote, but we had the sorrow to see both advice and admonition
ignored, and remain fruitless, end quote.
So you see his point?
Yeah.
Sometimes in translating, you need a translator to translate the translation. So it's a good point. And that's what we encountered with that Immortale Dei translation. It wasn't the best. But I have a better one, which we're going to come back to, Immortale Dei. So his point is well made. Go on.
In cases like these, they were numerous. I have usually followed the middle course, bearing in mind that an encyclical is not to be translated like, for instance, a novel. We are not aiming at stylistic perfection, but rather at a fairly close adherence to the original on the one hand, and intelligibility and reasonable readability on the other. This is certainly more difficult than opting from the outset for a common English rendering. It means finding some expressions, similar to the original, that will be understood in English while conveying an identical meaning.
Yeah, so Google translations often do this. They get the literal translation, but you lose sometimes the sense. So, all right. In numbering the paragraphs of this encyclical, I have followed the French version of La Cité Catholique, off-print number 91. La Cité Catholique was a French publication, the Catholic City. Undated but probably printed in the 1950s, La Cité Catholique no longer exists as such, but it has been succeeded by another association with very similar, if not identical, aims and purposes called Office International d'Œuvre de Formation Civique et d'Action. That's a long International Office for the Works of Civic Formation and Cultural Action in accordance with the natural and Christian law. The books, pamphlets, and off-prints which this office publishes or stocks are invaluable for a correct understanding of today's problems in the social, political, cultural, and religious fields. Some are now available in the English language. Okay, so much for the introduction. Paragraph headings. So look at this. How many paragraphs are there in this?
49.
Yes, so you can see errors must be condemned. Credit is given to the Zionists for their dedication. The origin of the Sion, courage of its members. So it started off well, started off good. Straying from the right path. Next, ignoring advice and admonition calls for censure. The Zionists claim for complete independence. Their claim is unjustified. They teach positive errors. Now they're starting to fall into big errors. They uphold a condemned democratic error. They ignore the natural laws governing human nature. 11, Guadalupe, go on.
Human society must be built according to God's plan.
12,
The main points of the Zionist doctrine:
13,
liberty and equality,
14,
government by the people,
15,
the political aspect, authority in the people,
16,
the economic aspect, guild socialism,
17.
the moral aspect, the community first.
I wonder what that do with the new mass down the road. 18,
The three aspects are interrelated.
19,
Democratic education of the people, a dream.
20,
A doctrine contrary to Catholic truth,
21.
the real source of authority.
So what do you think he's going to say in 21?
That it doesn't come from the people, that it comes directly from God.
Yes. 22,
Authority, liberty, and obedience.
23,
Justice and equality.
24.
Fraternity versus charity.
There's a big one. Fraternity versus charity. Pius X goes into what's true charity. And fraternity is basically love, 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 do good without Christ, without the Catholic faith. And it's empty. 25,
Human dignity.
26,
Effects of the Zionists' errors on their policy.
27,
The Zionist organization.
28.
False principles produce dangerous practices.
Yes. Ideas have,
Consequences.
principles have consequences. Principles have conclusions. Dangerous conclusions. A small error, parvus error in principiis, manus error in conclusionibus. A small error in the principles leads to huge errors in the...
Conclusions.
A small turn of the steering wheel for an airplane pilot flying from New York City to LA. A slight turn 1.5 degrees can bring him where?
Into the ocean.
Probably somewhere to England or something.
Well, San Francisco. Right? LA, you just slight turn, you're going to end up in San Francisco, which is 5 hours north. Or maybe up even in Seattle, or even worse in Canada or Alaska. Just one little turn. 29.
A legacy from the Revolution of 1789,
Otherwise known as the
French Revolution.
30.
A reprovable doctrine and a reprovable action.
Yeah, action and doctrine that needs to be spanked and corrected. 31.
The church does not care for democracy.
32.
The duty to use politics to defend religion.
33.
From the little Sion to the greater Sion.
34.
From the greater Sion to a really ecumenical union.
Ecumenism. I love this encyclical because when I first read it, it was 1986 in the seminary. And that October, Pope John Paul II just gathered all the world religions in Assisi. And the only voice that rose against it in all the world was Archbishop Lefebvre. And, well, these popes just continue this so-called tradition of ecumenical meetings. But you don't hear Bishop Fillet, you don't hear Bishop Galaretta preaching against Leo XIV scandals. You don't hear them. Archbishop Lefebvre would be hammering this over and over again because it attacks the faith. But you don't hear the traditional bishops anymore. You see how serious that is, that silence. It's really a sin, a huge sin in God's eyes. Subjectively, I don't know where they're going. But objectively speaking, it's a huge sin of omission on the part of the Catholic bishops. 35.
Very serious remarks.
36.
The action reflects the philosophy.
In other words, action follows
Idea.
ideas. Ideas have consequences. Yes. Action. Yes. How you think, you will.
Act.
37.
A misguided political ecumenism.
38.
Reversing traditional values.
39.
A humanitarian dream.
40.
Towards the one world church.
Ooh, one world church. What does ecumenism have to do with that? So you see, Archbishop Lefebvre was standing on solid ground here. And we are too. It's not us. It's just we're standing on what the church has always taught, which is so refreshing. 41.
The gospel of the revolution.
42.
Charity does not justify compromise.
Repeat.
Charity does not justify compromise.
43.
Be at once gentle and fearless.
44.
A constructive alternative.
45.
Open to Sionists.
46.
A fatherly exhortation to the Sionists.
47.
A prayer and a wish.
48.
The closing benediction
49.
given at Rome by St. Pius X.
So we could say, I might dare say, the SSPX, the new SSPX, started off really good. And like the Sion, it's gone into liberalism. And Archbishop Pius X is calling the Sionists back to the Catholic Church. Come back to the right principles. So that's what Archbishop Lefebvre would call the society back to today if he was alive. Come back to the original position that I left you with. And Bishop Fillet has this chance right now with the consecration of bishops. But I think Bishop Sobnitsky might be head-on correct. It's just a theatrical play. And when you get a crook like Cardinal Fernandez involved, or Bishop Fernandez, that's a bad sign. You know who he is, right? He's the one that wrote this pardon me for even saying it, but this is the time which we are in, a pro-homosexual book. Someone writing some book, something about the kiss of the kiss, whatever. It's just a scandal. And totally open to the whole rainbow movement. So they're going to make consecration of bishops dealing with this crook? Very suspicious. Page 5. Letter of our Holy Father, Pope Pius X, to the French archbishops and bishops, to our well-beloved sons, Peter, Hector, Collier, Cardinal Priests of the Holy Roman Church, Archbishop of Lyon, Louis Henry Lusson, Cardinal Prefect of the Holy Roman Church, Archbishop of Rheims, Pauline Peter Andrieu, Cardinal Priest of the Holy Roman Church, Archbishop of Bordeaux, and to all our other venerable bishops, brethren, and French archbishops and bishops, Pius X Pope. Venerable brethren, one error must be tolerated.
It must be condemned.
Yes, condemned. Hammer away, Andres.
Our apostolic mandate requires from us that we watch over the purity of the faith and the integrity of Catholic discipline.
Look at that one sentence. Just look how powerful that first sentence is. What's the duty of the Pope?
To watch over the purity of the faith
And
and the integrity of the Catholic discipline.
Are our popes since Vatican II doing this?
No.
No, they're negligent. They're letting the wolves tear the sheep apart because they don't care about Catholic doctrine. They don't even know it. Go on.
It requires from us that we protect the faithful from evil and error, especially so when evil and error are presented in dynamic language, which, concealing vague notions and ambiguous expressions with emotional and high-sounding words, is likely to set ablaze the hearts of men in the pursuit of ideals which, whilst attractive, are nonetheless nefarious.
Government by the people, for the people, of the people. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? But it's deadly. Deadly phrases. Liberty, equality, fraternity. Sounds exciting, but not taken Catholic leads you off the cliff. Attractive, yes, but nefarious, meaning harmful. Harmful. Extremely harmful. What are some today modern buzzwords that sound good, but they're deadly? Mercy killing. Donate your organs. Sounds good, but they kill you to get your organs. Vital ones. What else? Pro.
Live and let live. That's a little catchphrase.
Yeah.
Let live.
Oh, pro-choice.
Pro-choice is another one of these buzzwords. High-sounding words, likely to set ablaze the hearts of men. Pro-choice, liberty to choose. But what's it really mean? Dripping with blood. Does the baby have the right to choose in the mother's womb? Has no choice whatsoever.
Another one, and this goes with the LGBTQ movement, they say love is love.
Yeah.
They say love is love. All love, quote unquote, is good.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, horrifying. Really sick. Go on.
Such were not so long ago the doctrines of the so-called philosophers of the 18th century. Such were not so long ago the doctrines of the so-called philosophers of the 18th century, the doctrines of the revolution and liberalism, which have been so often condemned.
Okay, name a few of these philosophers, anybody?
Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
William Couture, is that how you say it? William Couture?
Kant.
Immanuel Kant, definitely, 1700s.
Descartes.
Rene Descartes, he's 1600s, but he's in that group. And who influenced the political thinking of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington? They read him.
What's his name?
An English author. John
Jean-Jacques Rousseau?
John
starts with an L.
Oh,
John Locke,
yes.
right?
John Locke.
Thomas, there's a cartoon called Calvin and
Calvin and Hobbes?
yeah, Thomas Hobbes was another one of these philosophers. So all this whole rat nest of philosophers of the 18th century, that's 1700s, right? All the revolutions that erupt at that time across the world are condemned by the church. Finish the paragraph and we'll end.
Such are even today the theories of the Sion, which, under the glowing appearance of generosity, are all too often wanting in clarity, logic, and truth. These theories do not belong to the Catholic, or, for that matter, to the French spirit.
Yes, so this is getting good. Next class, Agitatorium Nostrum in Nomine Domini.